everyone, my name is Chelsea and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, we have my March wrap-up. We're a little late getting this video out, just because life has happened. Kids are on spring break and so everything just feels like it's been pushed back so much, but we are finally here. It's only a little bit into April, but like further into April than I really wanted it to be, but we are here now to talk about everything that I read in March. I feel like March was a pretty good month, better than February. February felt like a little bit slower, probably also because we only had like 28 days to do it, but I feel like March did pretty well. So we're going to be jumping into all of the stats first and then going into all the books as well. So for the month of March, I read 10 books, which is great. As you can see here, I only read 8 in February. The thing is, I did have some DNFs in March, but I also had DNFs in February. I had 2 each month. So I technically finished 8 books and tried 2 other ones, but again, still doing better than February. Same thing with the page numbers. I actually read 2,499 pages. That does include whatever I read from the books that I DNF'd. So we're over 2,000. 2,000 is like sort of the minimum goal that I have for every month. It's fine if it doesn't happen, but that's where I'm aiming for. So we did pretty darn well with that. We're gonna move down to the hours listened per month. January was an aberration. I will probably never hit almost 30 hours of audiobooks like ever again because it's not necessarily my preferred reading method, although some audiobooks are great and I would prefer to read things that way, but like in general, I'm not usually going to be picking up those as much. So like that is crazy. I did have 12.4 hours of audiobooks in March, and actually that is closer to what it would normally be. Usually, at least for last year, I was getting close to 10 hours per month, but not always hitting that. So the fact that we hit 12 in March is actually better than like last year was. So still going pretty strongly that way. I've also been tracking how many days on average it takes me to finish a book, and for the month of March, we're at 6.7 days. That is definitely longer than I think my normal average is. I think I just had some books that I was taking a while with. Some of my audiobooks and things like that are ones that I read mostly like in the car while going on errands, and so I don't necessarily prioritize them, and so those ones could take a while to read. So yeah, I do think March I was taking longer to read the books that I was reading than my yearly average so far. And then I've also been tracking the average amount of pages per book. The number of this is off a little bit because of the fact of DNFs. I'm tracking how many pages I read per book, and obviously if I DNF a book, it cuts it off short, so my number goes down. I do think my average length of books that I've finished has actually gone up from last year. I feel like I'm picking up a lot more 300 plus page books, but because of those DNFs this month, my average number of pages per book that I attempted to read is 249.9, so about 250 per book. But again, if I took out the DNFs, I do think that number would be much higher. Let's jump into the reading method. I read 5 books physically, 3 as audiobooks, and 2 as ebooks. That's a pretty nice split actually for what I've been doing. Moving into the genre, we read across 7 different genres in the month, which is quite a bit. I had 3 classics, 2 fantasy, 1 horror, 1 historical fiction, 1 romance, 1 sci-fi, and I did classify 1 as romantasy this time, which I am using as more of a catch-all for the fantasy romance and things like that that I read. It could also be romantic fantasy, but this one was definitely supposed to be romantasy, fantasy romance type of stuff. And it was at the point where like I literally could not pick if it was more romance or more fantasy, because I knew it was supposed to be basically like half and half. In the past, I have classified it as either more romance or more fantasy, and I actually had one this time that I could not pick. So I did add the romantasy category on here, so we'll see how that changes my numbers throughout the year. For the book format, 8 of them were novels, 1 was a manga, and 1 was a graphic novel or comic. As for indie or traditionally published, 1 was an indie published book and 9 were traditionally published. Okay, as for how I got it, 5 of them are ones that I owned on my TBR previous to this year, which is great. 1 is a book that I bought this year, which is also great because it technically would have been on the TBR as well. And then 2 were rereads. Those are off of my shelves. Technically, I've read them before, but it's not too bad. And then I also did have 1 book that I borrowed from Kindle Unlimited and 1 that was an ARC. I would always want to see this chart as more of these different tealy colors because those are the ones that I have been using for things that are owned already. Obviously I included my rereads as well, but I want it to be more teal than purple, so this is looking great. As for the age category, I had 7 young adult books and 3 adult books. This is sort of flipped. I would normally assume that it would be the opposite, more adult books read than young adult, but I did read some young adult things this month, and we will talk about those. Moving down to the publication year, I have been tracking that for the last 2 years, last year and this year specifically, in more of categories than just like individual years. So I do track things for like the last 3 years, so like the current year of 2026, I will also track 2025 and 2024. Besides that, we also then have backlist and classics. So we have a pretty good spread this month. We had 4 backlist books, which is going to be my biggest category no matter what because it has the most years. I also did read 3 classics, which is more than I usually do ever. And then we had 1 book from 2024, 1 book from 2025, and 1 book from 2026. And then the last thing that we are tracking before we get into my actual like star ratings for the month is where the author is from. I have been tracking my author stats. Now, when we get into like my full stats for the end of the year, I only track each author once. I've also been doing that for each month. So there are some authors that I've actually been reading like every single month that in my yearly stats, they're only going to be counted like for January when I first read them. But I have added in the stats for this month just so we can sort of see based on the authors I read this month. And so for this month, I have read 3 from the United States, 2 from Canada, 1 from Japan, and 1 from England. So again, a pretty good spread. The United States is pretty much always going to be the biggest number for me because publishing is so big here, but I love seeing the different other countries that authors are from that I've been reading their books. So that I think is our last stat before our star ratings. So let's jump into that one. My average rating for this month is 3.6. That feels really low, and it's because I had 2 of the DNFs. My average rating for the year is actually around a 3.6, 3.7 right now, so it's pretty average for me personally right now, but I would like it to be higher. So I did have 2 DNFs, which we will talk about. I had 1 3-star, 1 3.5 star, 2 4 stars, 1 4.5 star, and 3 5-star reads. So again, ultimately not a bad reading month, but yes, a 3.6. I would like to be higher. And so I think without further ado, that's all of our stats. We're gonna jump into all the books that I read in March, starting with those DNFs and then moving on to my favorite book of the month. So the first DNF I had was Bonded by Thorns by Elizabeth Helen. I picked this book in February and actually started reading it near the very end of February because of a scavenger hunt that I did, which you can watch if you want. I'll leave a link down below. But I was reading this book. I did get it off of Kindle Unlimited. This is a book that is indie published. I think it's been sort of picked up traditionally, but like only to get physical versions out. It's still very much the indie published book, and it is a Why Choose fantasy romance. This is the one that I did put as romantasy that is inspired by Beauty and the Beast. We have 4 different guys that are very beastly. They are like fae and dealing with the 4 different seasons. I didn't necessarily mind a lot of the stuff that happened. I did think the writing style was a little bit simplistic for me. Like I wished it was a little bit better. I do think this is potentially the author's like one of her first books. So like it wasn't necessarily bad. It was just like I would have wanted it to be a little bit better. But I was still reading it. I didn't really mind. I did see a little bit of the Beauty and the Beast aspects. My thing, the reason that I DNF'd is we just got to the point where I was wanting a little bit more slow burn. I remember seeing somewhere that this had some slow burn romance, and I feel like potentially this is more slow burn in the Why Choose building of the multiple relationships aspect instead of the actual romance, because I got about 187 pages in. So enough. I got enough into this book, like 40 something percent, I want to say. And we got to a point where our main female character, I don't remember any of their names, just so you know, our main female character ended up watching two guys have sex. And it was very like icky to me in the fact that this is something very personal to them. They were not aware she was watching it. It felt very sort of like she needed more permission to do this. Like, it just was like, you were not supposed to be there. I didn't like the way that it was set up and the premise of the whole like situation. It just, not even voyeuristic. They didn't know she was there. It felt like she was crossing boundaries. And I just really didn't like that aspect of it. And so for me personally, I decided, you know what? I think I'm just not the main audience for this book. I am intrigued by a different series by this author, so like I would be willing to try something else. And I know some people absolutely love this series. I just don't think it was necessarily for me. So I did DNF that. The next book I DNF'd was, again, just something that I don't think was necessarily for me anymore, and that was going to be Gwen and Art Are Not in Love by Lex Croucher. This is a Rainbow Crate edition, so it does have like the separate dust jacket. Here's the original cover. And this is something that I tried to read going in thinking it was going to be like a King Arthur retelling. It's not exactly. They're supposed to be sort of like almost descended from King Arthur. This is YA. It is historical. Two things that I don't really read very much of anymore. And we got to a point where I just realized that this wasn't necessarily going to be for me. It wasn't anything bad. I got like 40 pages in. It was just one of those things where it felt very like coming of age, figuring yourself out, coming out, because characters are going to be on the LGBTQ spectrum here. We basically have Gwen and Art, who are betrothed to be married. They hate each other, and it looks like Gwen has a crush on this Lady Knight, and Arthur potentially is going to like fall in love with Gwen's brother. It doesn't seem bad. It was just the whole like young adult, historical, coming out, finding yourself, things that I don't really read much anymore, that I just don't necessarily think it's for me. So I wanted to read other things, and I did put this down. Okay, those were our DNFs. We're going to be moving into my 3-star now, which is going to be Omori Volume 1 by Omocat. I got this as an ARC through NetGalley, mostly because I've been intrigued by the video game. This is a manga based on a video game. I have not played the video game, and I saw quite a few reviews of people that were very confused about this because they haven't played the video game, and then other reviews and other comments from people that have, saying basically like, why the heck are you picking this up if you've never played the video game? I think if you're going to be putting out crossover materials, things that are like adaptions, you should be able to do it for people that have not played the game or whatever it is, because wouldn't you want more of an audience to come to the other maybe original media through the book? I do want to play the game eventually, but so I was coming at it at a lens of, I have not played it yet, but I would like to read it and sort of see what's going on, because like, what if I do want to play the game? Like, I was coming at it specifically for that. And I gave it 3 stars. I was very confused, and like, yes, this is part of a game, part of a series. I just was wishing for a little bit more explanation, and I don't know how they frame it in the game, but there was a lot of like back and forth for different things. It's very mysterious. There are a little bit of horror elements. Like, I was intrigued, but at the same time, at least in this first volume, we got nothing. No explanations, nothing. And like, maybe the game is the same sort of way, but I was just hoping for a little bit more, because a lot of the comments were from people saying, you know, they've played the game before and they think this is a very good adaptation, but you do need to know some of the stuff from the game in order to get it. And so I was just wishing for a little bit more for people that weren't from it, because like, you would want them to read it and enjoy it and move into the game. I do think I will probably play the game eventually, and then maybe come back to it and see if that changes my opinion, because like, I'm just very curious. But yeah, I think it was fine. There are going to be more volumes in the series, so maybe answers come later. I don't know, but I wasn't as like into it as I was hoping to be. Okay, the next star rating that we have is a 3.5 star. And I do think we're going to be talking about 3 books right now, because it's all part of a series that I technically read this month in March. And it's the next 3 books in the Anne of Green Gables series. So I had been planning on doing like 1 book a month. as an audiobook. I've been listening to them as audiobooks. As like a reread / continuation this year, because I had only read, I think, the first 3 books in the Anne of Green Gables series years and years and years ago, and then never continued. But I ended up reading 3 books in the month of March. So I did read book number 3, Anne of the Island. I have read this one before, so this one was a reread. Then I also read book number 4, Anne of Windy Poplars. This one was a new book for me, as well as book number 5, Anne's House of Dreams. This was also a new book for me. So I did read all of these in the month. I did give book number 3, Anne of the Island, 5 stars. I really enjoyed this one. This is one that I had read before. I gave Anne of Windy Poplars the 3.5. So this is the one that we would be talking about right now. And then I gave 4.5. So I saw a comment somewhere recently that mentioned that they think the odd number and books, so 1, 3, 5, etc., are the better ones, and the even number books are not as good. And so far, my experience has concluded that that is true, because Anne of Windy Poplars was my least favorite so far of the entire series. Basically, Anne of the Island, I really, really enjoyed. This is where we start to get a little bit of like Anne's in college. We have a little bit of romance sort of stuff going on. I really liked the pining, will they, won't they stuff of her and Gilbert. And I really loved the ending of this book. I don't know if this was like, if this would be like something I'm reading for like the very first time, if I didn't have the background of Anne of Green Gables, if I would actually give it 5 stars, because these are not necessarily books that I would normally go for. But I really enjoyed my time with it. I love Anne as a character. I love how we get a lot of characterization and stuff through dialogue. So this was really, really good. You know, great. Anne of Windy Poplars is for like, I think at least 3 years of time when she's somewhere else teaching at a school in a different town. And I didn't like that this one is mostly told through letters from Anne to Gilbert. Like, he's just like not there ever. But not only him, but like hardly anybody. Like, we don't see Marilla, we don't see Davy and Dora, we barely see Rachel. Like, it's just one of those things where I'm like, this felt very weird. It almost felt like a short story collection, because Anne would just sort of tell stories to Gilbert through letters. But especially after the ending of book 3 and the romance and the, you know, buildup of that, this sort of like cut that off, and I did not like that as much. There were some aspects I did like, which is why it's a 3.5. Like, it wasn't horrible. There were some stories that were fine. It was just like not as much as I was wanting from with all the other Anne books, you know what I mean? So like 3.5, like it was better than just okay, but like not my favorite. And then I also did end up reading Anne's House of Dreams. I gave this a 4.5 because it wasn't as good as Anne of Green Gables and Anne of the Island, but I did really enjoy this one. We do get to see our characters again. Obviously, Gilbert has a much bigger part in here. We see Marilla a little bit. We see Davy and Dora a little bit. We get to see Diana a little bit, which I enjoyed. I like being able to like have them go back to Green Gables and that kind of thing. They live in a completely different area now. This is like where they were finding their House of Dreams. This does take some time over a while as well. I liked the new characters that it introduced. We had some extra storylines with those new characters that I found very intriguing. Like, this was a really good installment, I thought. I will say, because maybe it's written in the early 1900s, we do have some hints about pregnancy and things like that, but it is written very like vague. So vague that I was like, is she actually pregnant or is she not? She was a couple times. And just so people know, we also have an instance of like early infant death and things like that. So like this does have some very, very hard topics as well. But I think they were written in a pretty okay way and not super graphic, again, because we barely even knew she was pregnant in the first place. At one point they talk about a stork coming, literally. So like, yeah. Not a full 5, but I did really enjoy the new characters and the stories that this one brought together. Okay, let's move on to our 4-star reads. The first one that I have here is Breakout. This is by Zach Kaplan. This is a book that I got during the Friends of the Library book sale that I finally read. I bought it this year. It was the whole series, I want to say. It's probably a comic thing, and it's about these teenagers who are going to be doing this heist in this like cube. Well, it's very sci-fi. These cubes basically came from somewhere at some point. People are very sure it's aliens and things like that, but they are only kidnapping like a certain age group of like teenagers and things. And our main guy, his brother has been taken. And so now he wants to get him back, and he gets like these other teens together. I think one of the other characters, one of them, I think it's her sister was also taken. So like they are planning to do the thing that the adults haven't even been able to do, and they're gonna infiltrate and get the kids back. I really enjoyed this one. I don't normally like heist things, but I think the setup for this was really good. I really liked the art style and everything in here as well. It got a little bit crazier near the end where I was wanting just a little bit more from it, so that's why it's a 4-star, but I think it was really solid and intriguing, and like I said, I don't normally read heist things, but this one worked. My next 4-star was The Build-A-Boyfriend Project by Mason Deaver. I read this for the Trans Rights Readathon. I will leave the vlog where I talk about this down below. But this one I'm glad I got to. I haven't really heard many people talk about it. I did get this through Afterlight, so this is the Afterlight edition. And basically we have 2 characters here. One is Eli, who works at this like online journalism place, but it's mostly like gossip and things like that. And he goes on a date with Peter, who is like, it's like the most horrible date he has ever been on. Peter was late. He dumped his soup on him. He didn't go into the movie because he was taking work calls instead. And it ends up being this whole thing where Eli tells his boss that he's going to make an article about Peter. And his boss wants it to be about like making Peter a better boyfriend. That's the Build-A-Boyfriend project. But Eli would actually prefer it to be a little bit more about growing up queer in the South, because Peter had never really been on a date before, and there are reasons for this. This does have a pretty big miscommunication trope, just for people to be aware. It felt very similar in a way, not exact, but in a way to How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, with the whole like lying about exactly what you're doing, the different articles and things like that. I really enjoyed the characters. I thought this was really, really nice. I did want the ending to be just a little bit more wrapped up in a way. The epilogue fixed it a little bit for me, but like I just was wanting a little bit more. And I did mention this in the vlog, and I guess I will mention it here because it is a reason why I gave it 4 instead of 5 stars. Peter is very sort of inexperienced, very like nice guy, super sweet, all this kind of stuff, very anxious and nervous and doesn't want to be in people's way and things like that. And then we get like one really, really good sex scene in here, but it's very like praise kinky in a way where they keep saying good boy. It felt very dirty talk, and it's not exactly, but I was turned off personally by it. But at the same time, I didn't 100% believe that Peter would have been into that as well. And so it just threw me off a little bit. Everything else about it, it was well written, for sure. I would 100% read more adult books by this author, but yes. Okay, we're gonna skip the 4.5 star because we already talked about Anne's House of Dreams, which means all we have left are our 5 stars. Again, we already talked about Anne of the Island, so I have 2 books left that are part of a duology that I also read for the Trans Rights Readathon, week 1. I'll leave a link down below. I read the Sunbearer Trials duology. Is that what the duology is called? I don't know. Sunbearer Trials and It's Falling. Celestial Monsters. I gave these both 5 stars. I absolutely love this. I actually read the Sunbearer Trials a couple years ago, so this was a reread for me. It was already 5 stars. I already knew I loved it, but I finished the series. Yay! And I read Celestial Monsters, and I absolutely love this one as too. Like, it was just like so perfect. The Sunbearer Trials is definitely a lot more like dangerous trials, deathly trials in a way. I feel like this would probably be a good fantasy bridge to people that liked the Hunger Games, because it feels similar in the way certain things are set up that way. But our main character is Teo, who is a jade Simadios. So his mom is like a jade god basically, and the jades are a little bit lower than golds, and so he never thought he was going to go into the deadly trials, and he has to anyway. And I loved the characters and the friendships, and I just absolutely love this one. Well, we change a little bit to be more questing in this book, and I just absolutely loved it so much. Again, the characters and the friendships and everything that happens in this one, we actually have 2 points of view in here instead of just 1, and they work extremely well. And just the fact that these are like queer normative worlds, and all of that sort of stuff is just accepted at face value, and everybody's like perfectly fine with it. Like, we have characters who are trans, we have characters who are non-binary, like they're accepting of pretty much all the like, oh, she pronouns, he pronouns, they, them pronouns. We have a character who's basically questioning their identity in this book as well, and as soon as they say it, it is just accepted for what it is at face value, and I absolutely love that so much. I want these to be like a TV show or a movie, because I want to devour them in a different format because I love them so much. I can't even tell you necessarily which one's my favorite of these, because I actually feel like they go together very well. The vibe changes a little bit because of like Deadly Trials and like more of a quest sort of thing, but like they were so good. So this is the best stuff that I read in March, and I'm so happy I finally finished it as a series. It was so good. So that is going to be it for my wrap up today. Let me know what your favorite book of March was, or one that you're currently reading if you have a really good one that you're reading currently. And that's gonna be it. If you guys liked this video, give it a thumbs up to let me know. Subscribe to this channel if you'd like to see more videos. I do have videos coming out Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, so I will see you then. Bye.